Good afternoon. Welcome to TNC Radio.live. This is the Truckers Network Radio Show. And now here's your host, Shelley Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Yes, this is the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNC Radio.live, where we offer the news, information, traffic, weather, sports, and entertainment our commercial drivers want and need. The trucking industry has had many challenges with supply chain interruptions, runaway diesel and big rig prices, load fluctuations, and new regulations at the federal and state levels. Add in the pandemic, and it's just been really pretty crazy. We wanted to know what trucking companies and owner-operators are facing for 2023. We invited David Owen, president of the National Association of Small Trucking Companies, to get his take on what he sees on the horizon and what he's hearing. NASTC represents over 15,000 for-hire carriers in 48 states. Welcome, David. Thank you so much for being back on the show. You're always a terrific wealth of information.
Well, I'm delighted to be on your show again, Shelley. I enjoy doing this, and you guys are very generous with your time and allowing me to say my piece, so to speak.
And we love your insight. You know, the past couple of years have really been a whirlwind in trucking with the challenges that I don't think anybody ever expected, starting with the pandemic and everything. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges and maybe even victories for trucking in 2023?
Well, you know, I think the conversation over the past 4 or 5 years has always started out with the regulatory agencies, and I believe it goes beyond trucking. I think it goes to all small businesses, particularly small businesses, unfortunately, we're guilty. The citizenry, I think, has gotten in the habit of turning to Mother Government to solve our problems. And the truth of the matter is, it's very difficult to solve interstate problems from a central inside the Beltway. And unfortunately, the more the agencies try to help or try to solve problems, the more complex running a truckload of widgets 500 miles becomes.
It really does feel that way. Oh, yeah.
It does. And you know, we don't have a driver shortage. I think people are tired of being criminalized, quite frankly, by the overwhelming number of regulatory requirements that nobody really even understands or knows. I think a good start in turning the thing around would be to make a rule or a law or something that said anything that comes through a regulatory agency or through Congress or from an executive order can't be over 2 pages long.
Oh, I love that. Wouldn't that be great? Instead of 4,000?
Yeah. I mean, how can you, it's absolutely amazing that they put stuff out like that, and it almost daring you to question the stupidity of making it unreadable.
Yes. Well, part of the reason for that, isn't it? They want to sneak stuff in there that they're hoping you'll miss, and maybe they don't even know is in there themselves.
Well, I think the biggest part of it, and I don't want to bash attorneys, but the biggest part of it, I think, is that we're in a litigious society.
Yep.
And the lawyers get involved, and they try to cross every T and dot every I and anticipate every exception when they write the laws. And unfortunately, that just gets... I knew a guy one time who was very successful. He was a multimillionaire. Everything he did, he succeeded at. And I asked him one time, I said, what is the secret to your success? He said, I have no idea. We could call it luck or intuition or anything. I don't know what the magic sauce is, but I can tell you one thing. I know the secret to failure. And I said, really? He said, yeah, I can tell you how people will fail every time when they try to please everybody. Yeah. And if you apply that to our government or our regulatory agencies or even our local and state governments, when you try to create a perfect world, you're going to fall short. unfortunately, there is no utopia. And when you legislate or regulate based on that, you're going to fail every time.
Yep. What are you hearing from your members as some of the biggest concerns for 2023?
Well, obviously, the cost of everything, the ability to find better paying freight, the obnoxiously high and unrealistic, unbased insurance rates for small carriers or new carriers. They're making entry into this industry so difficult and so expensive that I don't think we'll be able to continue to have good family businesses come into the industry at the rate we have in the past. So I think, as the economy heals, and I think that it will heal throughout 2023, and then there'll be more and more need to haul freight. It's not going to be a driver shortage. It's going to be a company shortage, so to speak. And quite frankly, there's a place for mega fleets, but there's a place for a 10, 15, 20 truck family-owned trucking company as well.
Why is it, Dave, do you think it's so important for some of the mega fleets and those who report on them and talk about them? Why is it so important that they keep saying this thing about the driver shortage over and over again? I mean, I know it comes back to dollars. It always does. But what's in it for them?
Well, it goes back to, Tom, I think, here again, you ask my opinion, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
I think that the business model of the mega fleets is geared toward growing, and excuse me, in the trucking industry, the only revenue that's produced is when you haul a load of freight. So the only way to increase revenues and ultimately profit is to increase the number of loads you're taking, and to do that, you have to have more trucks and you have to have more drivers. So there's an unrelenting thirst from the stockholders of a large company to grow that company so their stock gets healthier. So that's what creates a shortage. Excuse me, a lot of the most successful trucking companies I've been able to be around over the last 35 years have been companies that found their size. I met a guy here in Nashville one time. His name was Charlie Brown, and he had 25 trucks. And he said, I can run 25 trucks, and I know exactly how to do it. And his sons got into the company, and of course they wanted to grow the company. They went to 40, 45 trucks, and Charlie told me, he said, I came in one day and I said, we're going back to 25. If you want to have a 40 truck company, you go start one yourself. He got back to 25 trucks because he knew how to do that. So growth is good. Uncontrolled growth or growth that's too rapid is called cancer. And I think that the driver shortage is nothing more than a symptom of the cancerous growth of large trucking companies.
Okay.
Do you believe? And again, this is an opinion question, and it's not like you're going to get buzzed in right or wrong. Do you believe that? That safety is as important to mega fleets as it is to smaller fleets?
No.
That's correct, sir.
All right, Tom.
Oh my gosh! I thought I'd be wrong. Absolutely. Their idea of improving safety is throwing more gadgets and money at it.
Sure.
Okay.
And the small companies, their idea of improving safety is finding better people to drive their trucks and keeping their trucks in better order and maintaining their trucks better. And it's a total, and not that the big companies don't maintain their trucks, and not that they try to be unsafe. They just their turnover rates. Tom, if you got over 500 trucks in today's world in the United States, you've got a turnover rate that's north of 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you can constantly turn your drivers over. And now I know there's a thing called churn, and I know that even if they're turning over at 100%, 75% of the drivers have been there decades, okay? But it's that 25%, and as they grow, that 25% becomes more like 45% because they're adding trucks and drivers. It just, I think, in my world, if I had a utopian idea, I would approach the turnover problem and the safety problem and connect the dots and say, okay, if your turnover rate's over 65%, you can't grow until you get it under that.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you run for office, David?
How about I run from office? How's that? I wouldn't walk for office. I'm much too old, and I swear I've got a guy, Jim Edwards, that represents us in Washington, and he takes care of that. I haven't been to Washington now in several years, and don't miss going up there, quite frankly.
I don't blame you. But you've got a wonderful perspective. We do have to go to break, David. I can't wait to unpack some more information and your insight on what's happening in 2023 in the trucking industry. We're talking with David Owen, the president of NASTC. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.live. Stay tuned for more coming up. Space in a semi-truck is limited. A majority of truck drivers spend a good portion of their careers living on the road. Trying to fit all the necessary home items, personal products, work documents, and food in a tiny truck cab can be a challenge. Staying organized on the road helps you stay more productive and comfortable. It also helps to be organized in the event of a DOT inspection. The Truckers Network has 5 helpful organization tips for truck drivers. Storage containers. Storage containers are inexpensive and come in a variety of different sizes. Depending on the size, you can fit a storage container in many different places. Make sure to measure the container before buying to ensure you maximize your space. You'll want to use every bit of your cab. Some items you can put in the containers include canned or dry food, water, cleaning supplies, exercise equipment, and toiletries. Some of our recommended storage containers include Iris USA TB42 12-quart stack and pull box, Idemi 6-pack plastic storage baskets, weight trim foldable shoebox. Command hooks. Command hooks are a great way to maximize your space and keep things off the floor. Install a couple command hooks and you can hang your everyday coat, hat, or bag. Here's a pro tip. Use Velcro to attach to containers or different items so they don't slide around while driving on bumpy roads. Some of our recommended command hooks include Command Small Wire Hooks, 16 hooks, 24 strips, Photo Snow Adhesive Hooks, Ultra Strong Wall Hangers and Hooks, Budding Joy Adhesive Heavy Duty Hooks, Over-the-Door Shoe Organizer. An over-the-door shoe organizer is great for keeping your closet and your truck cab organized. Instead of storing shoes, store your cleaning supplies, personal items, and some clothes. Check out our recommended shoe organizers. 24 pockets, simple houseware crystal clear over-the-door hanging shoe organizer. Aristocrat Homeware's over-the-door shoe rack and closet organizer system with 24 extra-large heavy-duty pockets. Shower caddies. Truck stop showers are a place you'll often be. Having a shower caddy full of your shower routine necessities will help ensure you have everything you need. Forgetting your toiletries will have you buying some at the truck stop or running back out to your truck. Shower caddies are also great for holding condiments, drinks, and dinnerware. Some of our recommended shower caddies include Greenbrier Small Utility Shower Caddy Tote, 7-pocket Shower Caddy Tote. Labels. Because there's limited space in a semi-cab, most of your things will be in containers. Investing in a label maker is a great way to organize your storage containers and drawers. It also makes it easy to find what you need. Check out some of our recommended labels and label makers. They include Dymo LetraTag 100H Plus handheld label maker, address labels 2.625 by 1 pack of 3,000 labels. Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com. Welcome back to the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. We're talking with David Owen, the president of NASTC, and getting his insight and his take on what's going to be happening in trucking in 2023. David, what do you think about what's happening in California with trucking regulations, and how's this impacting small trucking companies? It seems like there's all kinds of stuff going on in California.
Well, it's amazing to me why the government and the state of California, and I understand very little about anything that goes on out there, quite frankly. But the AB5 issue, the way I understand it, it actually delegitimizes, I guess that's a word, the ability to be an owner-operator or leased owner-operator in the state of California. Right. And the owner-operator model, one guy, one truck, one gal, one truck, and a trailer, is the safest business model we've got in full truckload long-haul trucking. The absolute safest. The owner-operator can't afford an accident. The owner-operator is a defensive driver by definition. And I don't think they went to destroy the owner-operator model. The whole idea behind AB5, and correct me, Tom, if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure about this, but it all started with a controversy about whether a company should pay for somebody's lunch or not. And it appears that that they're using the AB5 rule in California as a test pattern to unionize all trucking. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, to a certain degree. It's not, to me, it's all bottom line about the state. Again, I always follow the money. Who's going to get money out of this? The state is missing out, or they believe, on some of the income tax they can get out of a W-2, and because that's much more complicated for people who are working on 1099, this is quite clearly a push to figure out how they're going to, all this stuff, Dave, about how they're going to come in there, and it's to help the little guy who isn't getting his fair shake and having to use his own car when he drives Uber and having to use his own truck when, all that kind of stuff. To me, it's just a line that they're using to figure out how can we increase our tax base, especially with so many people leaving California right now because they're unhappy there, that, it puts, they have to have some way to make up for it. And so at the end of the day, what this really is about, it's a tax grab. And, I challenge somebody to prove to me that that's not true, but that's what I see is, why, I always come back to why are people doing this? And more often than not, when they're doing that kind of stuff, it's because they want money, and they want money to support their programs and to do their stuff. And this is the way to get more money, because they couldn't come up with a good way to tax the 1099 stuff the way they wanted to.
Well, and the other thing that I think is just very, very short-sighted and almost blind, myopic at least, is the fact that most truck drivers don't make enough money at the end of the day when you figure depreciation on a truck and replacement cost of a truck and the operating expense of fuel and all of that into the equation. Most truck drivers don't make enough money to pay taxes anyhow, Tom, whether you 1099 them or W-2 them or what.
Yeah, but no, you can get it out of the W-2. That's the thing. It's much harder to get it because on the 1099, I'm able to go through, and every time I spend the night at a hotel away from my home, I can get money back and all that. On the W-2, much harder. If I get everybody W-2, and I know that no matter who paid them and what they paid them, that I'm going to get 10% of that W-2 money put into my coffers. I'm going to figure out a way to get everybody in W-2.
Well, and you're exactly right. I think the W-2 part of the tax equation is it should be challenged, and it should be unconstitutional. There is no reason why you or I or a truck driver or anybody else should prepay their tax interest-free to the government on an estimated basis. And the other thing, too, with the Trump tax break, moving the deductible amount to 20% for pass-through companies rather than 10%, I'm not so sure that you brought up per diem and that sort of thing as a tax break. I'm not even sure per diem even made a lot of sense to a lot of guys if the law stays like it was for what is called a pass-through company.
Right.
They can just take a standard deduction of 20%, and it's going to outweigh even a heavily used per diem pay plan or expense reimbursement.
Sure, but again, if you're sitting in their seat, what can I do to get this money that could be left on the table? And, here's a surprise for you. Sometimes the unions and the government are working together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Sometimes the unions and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But
I am.
Yeah.
The first word in USSR is union.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the unions had a wonderful run back there before they were criminalized by the mob and Jimmy Hoffa and whoever else. There's not unions have outlived their usefulness, particularly in full truckload long haul carriage. Now, maybe LTL or other kinds of carriage, but I tell you where they're going to tax the tax base, Tom, is they're going to push this per mile driven tax to replace the fuel tax.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's keeping that from happening universally is the fact that four-wheelers don't realize what that's going to do to their tax base.
Well, but it's going to happen sooner rather than later, because they have got to figure out a way to get the money. If they're going to put EVs on the road, they got to figure a way to get the money back out of the EVs that are going to be lost at the pump. And again, every single state government's got and here's the amazing part: we're seeing cities, we're seeing states, we're seeing counties who are all looking to get a piece of that. So what's going to happen if you live in Colorado, it's going to be a per mile. And if you live in Wyoming, it's per mile based on which county. And if you live in California, it's going to be there's no uniformity to that. When I put together a list of all of the things that make electric vehicles impossible, and we were talking about this off the air a little bit, that was the first thing, is they got to figure out how to do the tax thing to get back all the money that they're going to lose at the pump.
Well, I totally agree with you. That's the thinking. But I try this on for a solution. Yeah. Why not change the fuel tax rate from a set rate by the state, federal, and whatever, to a percentage of the cost of the fuel? In other words, instead of having 24 cents wherever, I think Tennessee's 24 cents a state, and maybe it's, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a set per gallon tax. They missed the opportunity when diesel fuel got down to about $1.70 a few years back. They could have changed the fuel tax structure to a percentage-based fuel tax, and it would have been totally transparent to everybody, the four-wheelers, the trucking companies, and everybody else. And as the price of fuel goes up, just like a fuel surcharge, so would the amount of money that's being paid to take care of the roads and highways. That makes too much sense. Now, the other thing is that they're going to have, I mean, these charging stations, there's going to be a charge for that, is there not? Is there not going to, is all the, I know the government wants everything to be, air quotes, free, but that's not possible. You're going to have a charge to have a truck parked for an hour to recharge its batteries. Make a percentage of that charge a taxable item. They could come up with a lot of different ways that would be a whole lot easier to implement and make a whole lot more sense than a per mile tax. That per mile tax is going to be a killer.
Oh, it really would be.
Yeah, and I think we're just barely scratching the surface as to the problems that we're going to have, because we have an inconsistent tax model from state to state right now. And it's going to be so much worse when we have different people or different states doing different things. And,
the other elephant in the room, Tom, on a per mile tax, you got to figure out how to track people. There's a privacy issue there. You've got to track. You got to track the miles on any given car. And you could do electronic tickets, and there's all kinds of stuff. You could have a law firm finding out who's cheating on whose wife and all this stuff. There's a privacy issue that's involved with that, and lo and behold, do we want the state to get any more into our business than they already are?
No, I don't. And I guarantee the drivers don't.
Whether I drove 1,000 miles last year or 101,000 miles last year is nobody else's business but mine and my wife's.
You're absolutely right, and I totally agree with that.
And yet, if we get into that kind of a tax model, I'll have to report to the government how much I drove my car.
Exactly.
In some way,
and on a regular basis, on an ongoing basis, and you've got to prove that you're not lying to them.
And if you do lie to them, what's the penalty going to be?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I have no idea.
Do you end up going to jail because you're sitting in the room with three other guys, and you say, "What are you in for?" And he says burglary, and he asks the other guy what he's in for, and he says robbery, and they look at you and say, "What are you in for?" And you say, "Ooh, I lied about my mileage."
Right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're the scary guy in here. We're worried about you.
Tom, you may have heard this, but do you know what's the number one reason in the United States for spending the night in jail?
What's that?
Driving on a suspended license.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, though.
Yeah, driving on a suspended license. Did you know that a trucking company only has to update its MVRs every year, but there are 30, I think there's 31 or 32 states now that can suspend a truck driver's license for not paying his child support or his alimony. And do you think the driver knows that? Do you think the company knows that? They don't, unless they're checking their MVRs on a monthly basis.
Right.
Wow. That's one thing we do here at NASTC in our safety program. We monitor MVRs on a regular basis, and we try to mitigate that silent safety violation.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good plan, because otherwise it sounds like a major recipe for disaster. Wow.
Oh, it is. Can you imagine? You have an accident and you find out your driver's been driving on a suspended license for 2 months.
Yeah, it's a surprise you don't want to have.
You've got no chance in court to defend yourself.
We have to go to break here, David. There's so much more to unpack. We're talking with David Owen, the president of NASTC. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and you're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. Stay tuned for more coming up. Finding the right healthcare plan and insurance agent can be a challenge. Truck driving can be a dangerous job, and drivers expose themselves to unique health risks. Health insurance is an expensive but necessary expense for truck drivers. It helps protect them from unexpected high medical costs. Although truck drivers should have a health plan, many don't. Some trucking companies offer health plans for truck drivers, but if you're an owner-operator
or an independent contractor, you might have to find your own health insurance policy. The Truckers Network proudly partners with the Health Plan Partner to help our members learn about the options they have for health insurance. The Health Plan Partner is dedicated to helping members of the Truckers Network find and learn about what's available to them in the marketplace. Since 1985, the Health Plan Partner has helped their clients figure out the health insurance maze we're in. Here are 6 tips from the Health Plan Partner for finding the right health plan and agent for truck drivers. Review your options with an experienced agent that specializes in health plans and can guide you in the right direction, even if it's not a plan they offer. Determine your budget. There are options for any budget, but the adage is true. You get what you pay for, so beware. Have a list of your doctors, medications, and any health history. Some plans do require a health history. Review your current plan annually if you have one to see if there are better options and rates available. Plans can change constantly. Have the plans explained to you in detail and ask a lot of questions and role-play various situations. Quite a few times we only find out what the plan doesn't cover when we need it. Again, find an agent you feel comfortable with. You need to be able to trust them and call for guidance and questions anytime. With over 25 years of experience, Health Plan Partner wants to help truckers find the right health insurance plan.
Hey, this is the Road Hammers. You're listening to TNCRadio.live.
Welcome back to the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. We're talking with David Owen, the president of NASTC. He's got some terrific insight here. David, we've been talking about a lot of different topics. I wanted to go back to California again because it seems like all of the weird stuff kind of comes out of California with a lot of regulation. What are you hearing about the new, it's not a new law, but it took effect this year, that bans any engines prior to 2010, truck engines, from doing any business, I guess, in California?
Well, it seems like to me, and I don't understand it. There's an urban myth that if it's that California is the petri dish for all regulations and all cultural changes for the rest of the country, and I just don't buy that. I think I'm not going to put out publicly what I think of those decisions that come out of California. I'll tell you who would make a great guest for you guys one time is Joe Rakovich, if you've ever heard of that name. Mm-hmm. He's the executive director of the Western States Trucking Association, and he lives in California and deals with CARB and deals with California all the time. But why in the world would we want to imitate California? They're broke. They've taken the most beautiful piece of real estate in the entire world and made it ugly. They can't get out of the way of themselves as far as of legislation or government. They spent how many billions of dollars on a bullet train that'll never be finished or never have anybody riding on it.
Yeah.
They screwed up the water flow to the people that are growing the crops that are making their state is about the best thing that can happen to the state is the produce and the wine and the produce that comes out of California. I don't see why anybody, if I owned a trucking company, I wouldn't run in California. I wouldn't run to the West Coast. I think I could find routes that would not take me out there. But they're not the only ones. Connecticut just passed a new use tax or some such stuff for the privilege of driving on their roads. Tom, you're right. That all the states and all the municipalities are looking for money. Mm-hmm. Why don't we approach it from a different angle and live within our means and cut back on some of the spending? I mean, really.
Nice. Yeah. Put everybody on a budget. Can you imagine a politician on a budget? I bet that's an irritable politician.
Well, I'll tell you a little secret. I live in the great state of Tennessee, and we've got a balanced budget. and we've got a surplus of funds right now, and we got a lot of people coming here from Chicago, New York, and California. They're not all going to Florida, trust me, and they're not all going to Texas. A lot of them are coming here to Tennessee, and one of the reasons that we still are physically responsible.
And that's the way it's supposed to be. But somehow, I think a lot of governments have lost sight of that, and it's causing chaos. California is a perfect example. I mean, their economy, they're in major debt. And I think 30 or 40 years ago, they were very strong.
They tout the fact that they're the seventh largest economy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're 50, $100 billion in debt. Who knows how much they're in debt? But they keep passing stuff that's just insane.
Yeah.
I heard there's a proposal out there, and you correct me if I'm wrong, there's a proposal out there to make those people that are leaving California pay for leaving through a wealth tax.
Yeah, some sort of an exit tax. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
How you like that, Tom?
I'll tell you off air. I'm not allowed to say that stuff on the air.
I got it. But I'll give you an example. I guess I can use the name Landstar, which is one of the more successful business models in trucking for the last 50 years. They were probably 25 years ahead of their time, where they created a business model whereby the capacity owner leases his truck and driver onto the Landstar flag and dispatches himself. What an ingenious idea that is. But when AB5 came down, Landstar, over a year ago, told owner-operators or potential capacity owners, if they were domiciled in California, they needed to move if they wanted to lease on to Landstar.
Yeah, and all that does is increase the cost, the overhead. People shouldn't have to disrupt their business for these regulations that really seem absolutely pointless, except for Tom's point. It's another tax grab.
You're exactly right. Yeah. And it's never enough. I've got a great idea. Our local newspaper started not delivering on Tuesdays, because their funds were going down. Why don't we take the government and shut it down every Thursday afternoon and not open it back up until Monday?
I like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And quit spending more money than we've got. Exactly.
Yeah.
That debt clock that you see on television drives me nuts.
Well, the average person can't live that way.
No, nobody can live. A small company can't live that way.
Exactly.
And when they're and we're the small companies are the only tax basis, I think, that really generates a lot of the revenue that the government wastes. I understand they're going to try to force government employees in Washington to start going to work.
Imagine that, the concept. You have to go to work.
You know what? Why don't they just give them an unpaid furlough for a month or two and see if anybody misses them? Have you ever tried to call a government agency about anything? It's worse than calling the daggum electric company.
It really is. Very true. So what are the rumblings you're hearing from your membership in terms of concerns for 2023 in trucking? Is there a silver lining? Are there areas of concern that people need to be maybe mindful of?
Well, a couple, and it seems like we spend a lot of our time talking about the difference between big and small, and when you're very small or very new, I teach a new entrant survival training class once a month here at NASTC. And we get companies that come through here that are either very small, under 5 trucks usually, or very new. Some of them don't even have their authority yet. Mm-hmm. And the biggest issue that they have is not trucking, is not regulations. It's finding freight and getting paid to haul the freight. And that's a huge issue. Fraud in the freight and the truck arena, cargo theft and fraud and the bad brokers, people that are actually crooks that come in and create a false company and bilk small companies out of $300,000 or $400,000 and then unplug their films and move to another state. That's been going on for 50 years, and our government seems to be either turn a deaf ear to that, or the crooks know exactly when to stop the flow, and if it stays under a certain amount, the FBI won't even look at it. This thing about swerve and squat has been bilking the transportation industry out of hundreds of millions of dollars for probably 4 or 5 decades. It's rampant, by the way, in the state of California. I-5 it's rampant there. They load up a van with 10 people and pay them money to speed around a truck and slam on the brakes and make the truck hit them in the rear, and then they sue them. Mm. They uncovered, I'm sure you know about the group down in Louisiana.
Oh yeah.
That involved about 75. Tommy involved 75 different people. Some of them judges, lawyers, cops, and everything.
Doctors. Yeah. I mean, it was quite the conspiracy.
So fraud and dealing with fraud. I mean, a big trucking company can write off a 0.5% loss on cargo theft. A small company loses their house. I mean,
oh sure, yeah.
It's and the small companies are the ones that the fraudsters go after because they know they can't protect themselves, and they won't get any help from any level of government with the deal. You might as well forget that.
That's so.
They might get a little help from their insurance company if, in fact, they got the right insurance company that cares.
Okay, yeah, that's the key, though. Yep. Oh, there's so many things to think about. And, of course, all of the regulations that are creating nothing but red tape. And when people just want to be in trucking and do what they enjoy, they are just so encumbered. It's amazing, and you have to give your hats off to the drivers out there that they're willing to do this in spite of all that. The challenges are just enormous.
Leave us alone and let us do our job.
That's right. Don't tread on me. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Just leave us alone. Let us do our job. And don't twist the stats or the numbers to make us look like we're worse than we are.
Yep.
And there's a lot of that goes around, too. Every statistic that you get that comes out of the government, you need to look at where it came from. Mm-hmm. They use some really wonderful, unscientific methods like, I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank, but they use some very unscientific methods in making the numbers say what they want them to say. For instance, they'll say there's a 20% increase in something, and then comparing it to a COVID year when we ran half the miles.
Right. Yep.
And they say it like it's a crisis. For instance, I'll give you a perfect example of how they move the goalpost statistically. The criteria for putting a truck out of service on the side of the road has not, the percentage of out of service violations has not changed in 50 years, 60 years. Yet the trucks are 100 times safer, 100 times better maintained, and yet they're still put out of service at about a 20% rate. Why? Because they made the criteria they've expanded the criteria for passing a truck on the side of the road to 70 pages long instead of 70, and instead of 7.
Right.
So
it would be nice to simplify.
It's just like those guys on the side of the road will tell an owner operator, "Hey, you don't want me to give you a level 3 inspection. I'll find something wrong, and you need to get on down the road."
Yeah, that your 4-light is the wrong color amber.
Sure.
There's a right and wrong color amber now. Did you know that?
I did not know that, but I'm sure. I'm sure that people are going to jail for that violation.
Yeah. Well, they're not going to jail, but they're getting the truck pulled off the road because they looked at the guy funny, or didn't say yes sir fast enough or whatever. So then they look at it and say, that amber's too orange to be amber. That's really orange, not amber. And so I'm going to have to pull you until you get that light fixed.
What about the great state of Indiana that got on this kick of they would get on the downhill side on the interstate and pull a truck driver over that's doing 71 downhill in a 70, and they say, "Don't worry, we're not going to give you a ticket. We're going to give you a warning." And so the warning goes in just as bad as a violation in CSA. So it screws. They don't get a fine, they don't get a ticket, but their CSA numbers go through the roof. And on a 2-truck company, that may eliminate them from getting good paying freight or finding a driver, for crying out loud.
Yep.
And it was just a scheme by the enforcement folks in Indiana, and it went on for a long time. They didn't do that for a weekend. They did that for a year or two. And I may still be doing it. I think they put a stop to it, but it was so disingenuous. It just, and we talked about that, and nobody ever did anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
The data queue system for small carriers. Tom, do you know? Have you ever had to try to data queue an accident or a ticket or something?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, the process is a joke. You've almost got to get the arresting officer to admit that he made a mistake or was wrong in pulling the guy over. And then you can't afford to go 500 miles back to court. You just pay the fine and go on. The enforcement people out there are. They're not like they used to be. They used to try to help small companies become safer and be better stewards of safety on the road. And now they just like you said a while ago, every municipality, every government office is starved for more tax dollars or more revenue. And it's a revenue game now. It's nothing else. It all goes back to how much money can we bilk out of these little companies without breaking them. We don't want to really break them because they're the ones doing the loads, but we want to make sure that that we get all the money we can out of them.
That's right. You don't want to kill the goose.
We have to go to break here, and I want to be able to discuss exactly what NASTC does, David, when we come back, so you get more members. I think you've got a lot of people fired up with everything you're saying here, and it shows why you need organizations like NASTC. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and you're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.live. Stay tuned for more coming up.
This blog is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Truckers Against Trafficking can help fight modern-day slavery. Human trafficking is a real and frightening issue in the United States. It's a crime that forcefully exploits women, men, and children. Human trafficking involves transporting a person into a situation of exploitation, which can include forced labor, marriage, or prostitution. The term exploitation in this sense is commonly referred to as modern slavery. At this time, it's estimated that there are 20 to 40 million human trafficking victims internationally. According to the ACLU, the United States Department of State estimates that 14 to 17,000 people are trafficked into the United States each year. Truckers Against Trafficking exists to educate, equip, empower, and mobilize members of the trucking, bus, and energy industries to combat human trafficking. Truckers Against Trafficking goals: saturate trucking and related industries with TAT materials. Partner with law enforcement and government agencies to facilitate the investigation of human trafficking. Marshal the resources of partners to combat this crime. The Truckers Network proudly sponsors Truckers Against Trafficking and their efforts to fight against this heinous crime that's affecting hundreds of thousands of Americans each year. How truckers can help. Training video. Watch Truckers Against Trafficking's free training video and take the short quiz through their online portal. This will register you as an official TAT-trained, TAT-certified driver. Know the red flags. Download the Truckers Against Trafficking app and request a wallet card and window decal at tat.truckers@gmail.com. Share. Share Truckers Against Trafficking's training with others in person and through social media. How trucking companies, schools can help? Training video. Share Truckers Against Trafficking's free training video with your drivers. Request a digital file of your video or physical DVD from tat.truckers@gmail.com. Know the red flags. Tell your drivers to download the Truckers Against Trafficking app and or request wallet cards for your drivers from tat.truckers@gmail.com. Register. Register your company as trained to reflect your impact in the fight against trafficking and encourage others to do the same. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. It's Landline Now, followed by Steve Summers' Overnight Drive every night on TNCRadio.live starting at 11 p.m. Eastern and 10 p.m. Central.
Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with David Owen, the president of the National Association of Small Trucking Companies. David, if you could, please tell us where people can reach out to join your organization and why it's out there working for small trucking companies, what you folks do for them.
Well, we've been around 34 years now. We have a very simple of communication deal. If you call here, a real person will answer the phone, and a real person will try to help you get to the right person here. I have 45 or 46 really smart, young, high-tech folks that solve problems for small trucking companies. So one of the best things about being a NASTC member is we are a helpline. It's an 800 number, 800-264-8580. It's 800-264-8580. The other thing is, somebody wants to talk to me, I don't screen my calls. You don't have to be a NASTC member to call David Owen, and I'll be happy to talk to anybody as long as they're not trying to sell me something.
Okay, sounds good. And you folks have a website, too. It's a really great website.
It's NASTC.com. And you can get my email address is david.owen@nastic.com. And we're involved in about 20 different things. We've got one of the most prolific fuel programs in America for small trucking companies. We think it's the best one out there. We do drug and alcohol testing administration for over 5,000 companies. We, as you said at the beginning of the show, we have over 15,000 member companies, and we're in every state in the union. We do a lot of safety compliance work. We have an insurance agency here, NASTC Insurance Services. Excellent. And we also have a software development company, NASTC National, which houses our proprietary software product, Mystic Software.
You have all kinds of things. People can go to NASTC.com to learn more. David, I hate to cut you short, but we have to go to the top of the hour news. This has been marvelous. Thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure, Shelley.
You've been listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. Stay tuned for more great information and entertainment coming up. Thank you for listening to another great interview on TNCRadio.live and the Truckers Network radio show. All of the material you hear on TNCRadio.live, on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of TNCRadio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast of the Truckers Network Radio Show.